Good morning! Welcome back to the SimsVille stories. Today I'm going to introduce to you the Hamiltons, the second family of the first four main families in this custom neighborhood called SimsVille. In this video, we are going to look at the first, second and third generation of this family. And if you've watched my introduction video to this series, you know that there is already a fourth generation that has started to create the fifth generation of children. We are all going to meet them in future episodes, but before the stories can start, we are going to look at the history of this family. What happened to them and what did their lives look like before the fourth generation? So, as always, sit back, relax, and let me take you down a nostalgia trip down memory lane. And if you're thinking, wow, this footage looks really old, yes, it really is. Most of the stuff from this first and second generation is from back in 2004. And there were times where I only took pictures instead of videos. But from the third generation on, actually from the time where the second generation got married, I almost exclusively took videos. So we'll have lots of moving pictures later on, and the graphics get better too, yeah. So without further ado, let's jump into the Hamiltons. Agatha and Everett James have always been a real power couple, and they had one goal in life, that was to make this community a better place to live in. In their eyes, their two children were not only their children, but also the future of what this community could become. The idea for this household was to create a family who is really ambitious and who plays a big role in the community, combining popularity sims with fortune sims. So while Everett James worked hard on his business and gathering a fortune, Agatha spent most of her days socializing with people. She worked as a lobbyist in the politics career, and Everett James was a business tycoon. Open for Business wasn't out yet, so building businesses wasn't even a thing back then, but I always imagined him owning like a really big company with a really big office, really big building, and that is where he went every day. Looking back on things, I can also really see them running a big charity organization together. Agatha was home early most days and spent her afternoons socializing, throwing parties or small gatherings. She was never one to enjoy doing things around the house like cleaning and cooking and stuff like that. They hired a maid, a nanny and a gardener to take care of everything, and if it would have been a thing back then, they would have had a butler too. Their kids, Robert and Jane, grew up mostly being taken care of by the nanny and playing with educational toys. They did both have a very large children's bedroom of their own. It was like an entire wing of their house. None of it was decorated though, and that is mostly because back then I really put function over form, but also most of their money at the beginning really went to other stuff and not decorating their kids' rooms. So yeah, that is why. When the kids were asleep, their parents would sit in the kitchen after a long day of working and socializing and having a late night dinner and discuss how their children were doing. They were very involved in their children's lives, just more like we as watchers are, watching our Sims and guiding them from a distance. When their children were old enough, they enrolled them in private school. And of course the headmaster became one of their most valued connections in the neighborhood, and they stayed close to him all through their lives really, or at least Agatha did. Everett James and Agatha provided everything their children could ever need in the form of education, culture, and basically they lived a very privileged life in all areas that you can imagine. The family continued their life where the children were being raised at school and by nannies, parents being focused on their goals, socializing, working hard, and discussing their children over late night dinners. So I just went into this magic ancient save file again where these two are still alive. And we can see that Everett James is a business tycoon. They just reached the elder life stage, and you can see that the cakes are actually still on the table and the celebration stuff. So the house looks exactly the same. There's so much wrong with this house, and we're going to do renovations at a later stage. But yeah, like I said in the previous video, there's like so much nostalgia in here, so I'm definitely going to change it all up. I remember the idea that I had when I built it, and I do kind of want to do justice to it, so we're definitely going to do that. At this point, they are not retired yet. Everett James is still a business tycoon and Agatha is still a lobbyist. Looking at their personalities, they are really like the complete opposites of each other. So Everett James is a Virgo. He is modest and shy. Introverted Virgos take pride in their meticulous and practical approach to life. Unfortunately, these same traits could also result in a very fussy individual. He wasn't very fussy per se. I would say his daughter would be more fussy. He was just very, very neat, strict, and practical. And his bio says that he's a really traditional guy. He went to college and he would love to see his wife take care of the house. Of course, he fell madly in love with Agatha, who is really not the kind of person to take care of the house, so that didn't really work out for him. But they were happy together and they did make it work. So he is very neat, he's pretty active, and well, he's really in the middle of being grouchy and nice. He's very serious, always hard at work, and very shy, mostly to himself, very introverted. Agatha, on the other hand, is, like I said, like the complete opposite of Everett James. She is very outgoing, playful, very nice. She's very sociable and she loves to hang around with people. She's also a bit lazy and sloppy, so this kind of represents her not wanting to do any housework. So she's a Libra, a real Libra, romantic, charming, incredibly sociable. It's hard to not like a Libra. She pretty much had very good relationships with everyone in town. It was just, if you saw the Dawson video, it was a lot more superficial than, for example, Iris Dawson, who really connected with people. Agatha was much more just, she's charming, sociable, but it's also, you know, keeping up appearances and making strong connections to benefit them and their family in the long run. However, their social pursuits leave them little time for more practical endeavors, like keeping up with the house and raising children. That's why she had nannies. She was a nice person though. It's not like she was cold-hearted. Neither was Everett James. They do have warm hearts. They just really believe in their goals, and their focus in life is to make the community better. And in order for them to do that, they have to make sacrifices. And one of the biggest sacrifices they made is offering up their free time and their time with their family to strive for making the community a better place and to work on that. And so they, especially Everett James, he's a fortune sim, and of course Agatha is a popularity sim. So especially him, he did have the wish to earn a lot of money, and their household really revolved around money and having luxurious stuff, and they were a bit materialistic, I guess. And really in the beginning, in the older footage and on the very old pictures, you can see that their money really went to buying the luxurious items and luxury services and stuff, and there was no money left to decorate these kids' rooms or any of the walls or any of it really. So it was really kind of a fake it until you make it kind of thing. Later in life, they bought some art stuff and pictures and more decorations and stuff. But the old house, it was really kind of empty, maybe a bit cold. And it also, it's not just my putting function over form and not taking the time to decorate. It's also really representative for their focus on work and goals and not really focusing on their life at home. And as you saw, they ate late night dinners together at the bar, really, in the kitchen, and they never took the time. They don't even have a dinner table. They never took the time to really have a family meal with their kids. So their bond with their kids was there was a good bond, but it was a really, really different bond than, for example, the Dawsons had. So that's them, Agatha and Everett James. So having seen that, let's move on to the second generation and let's go and take a look at their children's lives through their children's eyes. The thing that these four family members have in common is that they are all really strong individuals. And this birthday party picture is really the only picture I could find where all four of them are in the same room together. And that is exactly how it was growing up in this household. They are all strong-willed, idealistic, and have the means to make a difference in the world. And even though they all share the same household and they are technically a family, growing up here always felt more like a family business than a home. Here we see Robert, their son, meeting his next door neighbor, Iris Dawson, for the first time. They would become best friends and stay really close throughout their entire lives. Robert was very much like his mother in character, extremely outgoing and extremely nice, with even more points in nice than his mother. He respected his parents and all that they had accomplished and even sacrificed to get them where they are. Maybe not when he was a little child, but he did start to respect their choices more and more as he grew up. His father always told him money is power, and power is the means to be able to do good for the greater good. So if you really want to make a difference, make sure you make money first. And this really resonated with him from a very early age on. It motivated him to work on his skills, and the respect he had for both his parents, combined with his own kind-hearted nature, really made him dream of a future where he could make a difference. He and his father really bonded over their political ideas. He did have his first kiss somewhere with a girl that he met in town, but it didn't really last, and he was way too focused on his goals to give her that much attention, really. He worked on his skills more, and when he was old enough, he joined the military. So he left home at an early age. And we'll see the rest of his story, what happened after he joined the military, when we get to the part where we take a look at his life in his adult life stage. But first, let's switch to his sister Jane Hamilton, and let's see what it was like for her growing up. Jane had very little in common with her brother Robert and her mother Agatha. Where Robert was focused on doing good for others and dreaming of using his position to help others, Jane was much more focused on herself, and you could call her egocentric. She didn't really see that other households were not like hers, and she didn't socialize with others enough to understand that her view of the world might not be their view of the world. In personality, she was nothing like her mother or her brother. She has 0 nice points, is a Scorpio with the fortune aspiration, is very neat and strict like her father, and also very ambitious. One time, she snuck out of the house late at night with her friend Iris Dawson, and her father gave her a lecture she will never forget. He went on and on about how important it is to lead by example. How can she ever expect to become someone that people look up to if she behaves like this? He was so utterly disappointed in her that she swore never to let that happen again. After James shared with her the same teachings as he did with Robert, money is power, power is the means to be able to do good for the greater good. She got the money part, and she liked the idea of power. The rest of it was just kind of lost on her, being too busy focusing on herself, her materialistic needs, and the more ego-driven visions of the future that she had for herself. Her father sort of molded her into his own image. There was never a question of what she was going to become in the future. Her path was pretty much laid out for her. She was going to go into politics, and even her future husband was introduced to her by her own mother. It wasn't an arranged marriage in the strict sense of it, but it was expected that she would follow the plan and get married to Rudy, as her parents had wanted for her. Part of her wanted all of these things too, and she never really questioned any of it. She focused on her studies and did what was expected of her. She loved debating in high school, loved to outsmart her opponents with quick and sharp remarks, never being worried about being liked or being accepted. She discovered that if she put her mind to it, she really could do anything she wanted. She didn't necessarily feel superior to others, she just wasn't bothered or held back by people not accepting her. She knew life in politics was a marathon, and she wasn't going to fight every little battle. She stuck her nose in the air and continued doing what she thought was best in the long run. Jane soon became a workaholic like her father, working, studying day and night, and climbing the ladder of the political career in no time. She made good use of all of her mother's connections to do so, and ended up living with her parents quite a few years into her adulthood, while she was still dating Rudy, but didn't move into her new house yet. By the time they did move into their new house, Jane was well into her 30s, and Rudy was even a few years older than that. He proposed to her in the garden. They had a lovely small wedding at home. Now that they could finally be together, they saw marriage as something sacred, and they wanted to share this special day with only their family and closest friends. Rudy adored and admired Jane. He is a workaholic like her, and he has almost the exact same character points as her father did, and I believe I did that on purpose as part of the story. Rudy's bio says he is recently graduated and is determined to make it as a doctor. He is a bit distant and very career-driven. I gave him 1 more point in outgoing than her father, and 1 less inactive than her father had. Of course, by the time he gets married, he is already working as a doctor or has even reached the chief of staff position. In the current day, he owns the hospital, but in those days I hadn't built any of those community lots yet. Jane is a fortune sim with the secondary aspiration of knowledge, and Rudy is a knowledge sim with the secondary fortune aspiration. Here we see them on a very rare occasion where they are just calmly hanging out together, because I mostly remember them being hard at work, studying, each with their noses in their own book or laptop, until late at night and then straight to bed to get an early start in the morning. They are both equally neat and active, representing their meticulous preparation for business meetings and speeches, and their drive for success, so they do have that in common. Another thing they have in common is they mostly like to keep to themselves, except for the occasional dinner with their friends Iris and Bob Dawson, who you have met in a previous episode. They didn't socialize much, unless it was absolutely necessary for work purposes, but otherwise they just really enjoyed keeping to themselves, and it is really only that Jane's parents and her brother Robert really insisted on it, that they had the occasional family dinner at their place. Now, those were not the warm and cozy family dinners that you would expect in any other household. Those family gatherings at Jane's house often turned into discussions about various political subjects. Here we see her father, Everett James, having a heated discussion with her husband Rudy about the justice system. They had discussions like that every time they saw each other, but they respected each other way too much to let this turn into a real argument. Fortune Sim and Rudy's colleague at the hospital, Kennedy Cox, is starting a discussion with Iris Dawson on the couch, and behind the stairs in a quieter part of the house, her mother Agatha is catching up with her daughter-in-law, Robert's wife, who we will meet later this episode. All in all, this pretty much sums up life at Jane and Rudy's house quite nicely for the first few years of their marriage. Soon after that, their son Jeremy was born. And after taking one day off from work, cooking, taking care of the baby, both of them decided this wasn't for them. They hired a nanny to take care of the baby and some cleaning around the house so they could focus on their careers, and Jane soon got what she had always wanted. She reached the top of the political career and became the first mayor of SimsVille. So let's go back to her brother, Robert, who we left earlier this episode when he joined the military. We have already seen that Robert Hamilton and his sister Jane Hamilton were very different people, but their choice in partners was also a huge influence on what it was like for their kids to grow up in their houses. They both chose a partner that loved, admired, and respected them, but where Rudy was very career and fortune driven and strived for status and success for himself, Jackie, Robert's wife, was much more the supporting partner that liked staying out of the spotlight, where her husband seemed to be constantly in it. They had met through their mutual friends Bob and Iris Dawson, and just like the other partners for all of the 8 second-generation Sims, I created Jackie specifically for Robert. She lived with the other 3 female Sims that I created at the same time, until she was introduced to Robert and moved in with him. When Robert returned from his service, his great leadership skills brought him to the post of commander, getting him out of the line of fire long enough for him and Jackie to start a family. Jackie is a family sim who is into arts and crafts and has an office job as an executive assistant. After the kids left for college, she started focusing more on her career and was promoted to senior manager, but in these early days, her job was not her first priority, far from it. She spent all of her early years being the best wife to Robert she could be, and she loved being sort of the supporting act, knowing that in time, her time would come to shine. This is how they had arranged it, and they both felt quite comfortable with prioritizing Robert's career in the early stages of their marriage, knowing that someday Robert would start spending more time at home and she would go out and pursue a career and further personal growth. They did, of course, hire a nanny because, well, they're Hamiltons and they were used to that. And at least this way Jackie could go to work during the day, but she had no time focusing on further striving for promotions after work or studying or anything like that, or working on her relationships, not even that. She fully focused on her kids after she came home from the office. She is a Scorpio with the family aspiration. She has 6 points in neat and outgoing, 7 in active, and only 3 in playful and nice. So she is on the serious and grouchy side. To me, her personality in combination with her zodiac sign makes perfect sense for her story, even though it is nothing like Max's standards. But do let me know if you think differently. Robert had always greatly admired his parents, not only the messages that they taught him about making the world a better place, but also the relationship that they had. Although their love has always been romantic too, Everett, James and Agatha had a relationship that was much more built on solid partnership and working towards their shared goals in life. It is something that Robert always really wanted and that he found in Jackie. Robert knew that at this point in his life he wanted to prioritize his career and try and become a general, but his real dream has always been to become an author and write a book to share his wisdom with the world and to share with the world all of the leadership lessons that he had learned during his time in the military. So they sort of made a pact that as soon as they saw an opportunity to do so, they would kind of switch places, and when Jackie would start to work on her career, Robert would start to write his books. So at first they agreed on having one kid, their son Roy, who they were so proud of. Roy looked so much like his father that it seemed like they had just cloned him, but they didn't, obviously. As soon as Robert was old enough to go to elementary school and Jackie started to work again, she got pregnant for the second time. And their second son, Jake, was born and joined the dinner table. Of course, they were equally proud of Jake, and when he was old enough to go to elementary school too, Jackie's wish to have a big family won from her ambitions to start pursuing a career, and so they had their third son, Eric. Somehow this third one didn't lead to a bigger dining table or a house renovation for years and years, but we'll fix all of that later on. First, let's jump into the game and see how these third generation kids are doing these days and what growing up in this household was like for them through their eyes. So here we have Roy Hamilton in his adult age. If we look at the family tree, here we have Everett James, Robert Hamilton, his son, and Jane Mulholland, now that she married Rudy. Robert had 3 sons, as we saw in the previous flashbacks. Roy Hamilton, Jake Hamilton, and Eric Hamilton. And Jane had 1 son, Jeremy. Now they're all adults and all very close to becoming elders. So yeah, let's take a closer look at Roy. He is friends with almost the entire town actually, because when Jane retired, he took over as the mayor of this town. He has close relationships with almost everyone and he kept in touch with as many people as possible, even though there are way too many Sims to have close relationships with. But he did his best, he did the best that he could. He actually has a room for gatherings and stuff where he always invited people after work and had parties and stuff. So yeah, I used to run this household as a home business. So he actually got he received money for inviting people and having fun and building relationships and stuff after work, or on the days that he didn't work, so on the weekends. So he was mostly busy entertaining people and working on his relationships. He is married to Tasha Hamilton, who you might know as Tasha Go. You saw her in one of the previous clips. And finally, after years and years of not using any custom content, I started downloading hairs and stuff, and I gave her a makeover. So for those of you that are disgusted by the ponytails, yes, I understand. And I used to have one hairstyle for every sim, so I could, keep them apart, and I only used the basic hairstyles. So it felt like really weird to give them a different hairstyle that someone else was already wearing, because they would look too much like each other. But since all of the new custom hairs, that is not an issue anymore. So I started doing the makeovers a few years back actually. So he's married to Tasha. He has 4 sons, Walker Hamilton, Matthew Hamilton, and who you might know from Cherry Blossom Springs, Daniel Hamilton and Jonathan Hamilton. All of the other ones they're all Hamiltons, all of them. And of course his parents, Robert Hamilton and Jackie Hamilton, who have grown into elders by now. Yeah, so his job, he is still the mayor. He is not going to retire yet. He will be the mayor for a few more years before someone else takes over. and he has worked on quite a few skills in his lifetime. And this is actually one of the households that I played the most, because he invited everyone from around town, and he had all these parties almost daily. It was almost like a community lot where I could work on other people's relationships and do some matchmaking, because he would know everyone, and he could just call Sims that were supposed to meet and be together, or at least I thought they should be together. So he's actually more of a matchmaker than a mayor, really. I used to spend a lot of time in this household, but now that the kids are all grown up, they're all graduated from college, it is time to move on and let Roy grow into an elder, and let his kids start their adult lives. So of course that is what we're going to do in the stories to come. Then, looking at his personality, he is a Leo, always everyone's favorite. Leos are complete extroverts. Unfortunately, this makes them deficient in other areas. Well, I don't know if he's deficient, and I sure didn't let him be lazy. I let him work very, very, very hard, because, like I said, after work, all these parties and stuff. So he's very neat and outgoing. He's a real Leo, keeping up with all these relationships and having all these parties. So that really, really fits him. Tasha did most of the raising the kids and taking care of the household and cooking and everything like that. They are one of the happiest couples in the game, really. They are high school sweethearts, and just from the moment that they met as teenagers, I thought they were so cute together. And this household has always been so warm and cozy and fuzzy, and I really think that's because of Tasha. I think it's almost impossible not to let her be like a really warm, loving, caring mother figure. And yeah, so we're going to take a look at her. And there's a dog. Could you please not be here? Thank you. So yes, we're going to take a look at her later. His seriousness is really something that he inherited from his grandparents and his father. I always interpreted that for him as being like really serious about his job and about wanting to play a big role in the community, and he takes everything he does in life very seriously. He takes his friendships very seriously. He takes other people very seriously. He's a good listener, and he's and honestly, if I could go back, I would probably let his parents encourage him to be more nice, because I think that would really suit him to be nicer than he actually is in his character profile. Maybe it's something that I'm actually going to do. I could give him more points in nice now that I know how to do that. It would really make sense to me that his parents, or maybe even his grandmother, because he spends so much time with his grandmother, that it would make sense that she would have encouraged him to be more nice and to get in touch with people, to listen to their problems, and all of the things that Everett James and Agatha believed in. They really try to teach that to their kids and to their grandkids, and Roy is the one that is most like his father and his grandparents. And there is something wrong with his wands. It does that after a while, after playing for a very long time. I'm not sure what caused it. I do know that if I play this household for a few days, it will go away and this will turn into real wands again. So it is not something permanent. It does bother me, but I've learned that it does go away after a while, so I'm not too worried about it. Roy, of course, lives in this huge mansion that is the mayor's mansion, and I'm currently working on a big project in the garden because there's going to be a double wedding. That is why his two sons are currently living here together with their fiancés. It's not finished yet, and I don't know what the end result will be like, but this is basically the idea, to have a big wedding, double wedding, and a DJ. So it's really going to be a big party. We're going to invite the entire town, and well, not everyone, but I'm going to try my best to invite as many of his friends as possible. Speaking of his friends, we didn't really look at his closest friends. Like I said, he's friends with almost everyone in town, but he does have close friendships. As you might remember from the previous episode, he is really close with Parker Dawson and his wife. Oh, there she is, with Amber Dawson. and Leonard Stefanoff, and of course Ivy Stefanoff. So those were the 6 friends that were always really, really close. He's also really close friends with Sandra Townsend, and where is he? Patrick Townsend, who we will see in the next episode from the Tuckers. Patrick changed his name to Townsend, but he is a Tucker. They own a lot of businesses in town, and therefore it is really beneficial to both of them to keep in close contact. And he has always been friends with co-mate Tellerman too. Probably because he ran into him all the time at the Dawson house where he spent a lot of time. Oh right, and he has always been really, really close with Nina Dagerath and Elsa Margolis. Yeah, we're going to get into their stories later on, but he's always been really, really close to them too. Here we see that he had his first kiss with Tasha. We're going to see that in clips because, of course, there's footage of that. A lot of it, really. They went steady, so they really were high school sweethearts. And yeah, they grew up together, and they actually went to college together. And his last memories are of his sons graduating. Yeah, that is Roy. So from the moment that Roy was born, he was really the pride and joy of his grandmother, Agatha, and of course of his parents. There were a lot of expectations for him to grow up and carry on the family legacy, but there was also a lot of love. And since Agatha and Everett James were not that focused on their jobs anymore, they pretty much accomplished what they wanted to accomplish in life, and they had kids to carry on with what they were doing. So they had much more time to really spend with their grandchildren. And whenever they would visit, they would really take care of the kids and play with them, teach them stuff, and they would also babysit. Especially later on when Jackie started working again and Roy and Jake were a little bit older. They would come around the house quite a lot to babysit and to spend time with the children while their parents were at work. And after he was born, quite a bit of time passed before his brother was born. So for a long time he really got used to being a center of attention and having all of the eyes focused on him. So Roy did really spend quite a lot of time with his grandparents. And the teachings that his father received were also instilled in him. And he, from a very young age, was really close to the boy next door, Parker Dawson. And if you've seen the previous episode, that's where we go into all of Parker's background. But they are really similar in the sense that they both really value justice and equality and to make the world a better place. Parker in his way and Roy in his own way. And I think these boys really did learn a lot from each other. I also talked about that in Parker's episode. For Parker, being around Roy's father, Robert Hamilton, a lot might have had something to do with him going into the military later on and becoming a general himself. And for Roy, being around the Dawsons a lot made him shift a little bit towards making real connections with people, genuinely caring about people, where of course his grandparents were mostly focused on status and success and striving to make the world a better place for everyone, but also really keeping up the appearances that they were strong and capable and stuff like that. And the Dawsons were more like the down-to-earth people who you can really talk and relate to. And here we see Iris Dawson coming to pick up her son, little Parker Dawson, because it is past his bedtime. So growing up, Roy Hamilton had a dedicated father who taught him all about loyalty, respect, duty, selflessness, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And his grandmother, who was by then a well-known and well-liked public figure in the entire neighborhood, who was a role model for really the entire family on how to conduct yourself in public and taught him about public speaking. And of course he had a loving and dedicated mother, Jackie, who further taught him how to use his charisma to encourage and motivate people. And last but certainly not least, his grandfather, Everett James, who shared with him his visions about getting yourself in a strong enough position financially and with enough power to be able to make a difference in the world and to do good for others. So by the time Roy Hamilton grew up into a teenager, he was sort of a wonder boy, carrying on the Hamilton name and what they stand for, but he was also humble, kind, respectful, and most of all, loyal. When he was a teenager, he met Tasha, who you might know, and as Tasha Go, and I've always thought of her as like the perfect girl next door. She has such a sweet and girly vibe to her, and it's also her character profile that says that she is a family sim and something just really sweet and caring about her. And they were so sweet together. And since Roy is someone that the entire neighborhood kind of looked at as probably the perfect boy next door, they, from the moment they met, kind of just had destiny written all over it. So yeah, he was really traditional, introduced Tasha to his father very early on, and they approved. And how could they not? I mean, Tasha was in their eyes from a respectable family, and she was like the sweetest girl ever. So they immediately approved of their relationship. They spent a lot of time up in his room, just hanging out, talking about everything, talking about life and their future dreams, and they shared their first romantic kiss together. And I think even at that age, Roy already knew that this was going to be the mother of his children. So they hung around with the other neighborhood kids a lot, and Roy would talk about if he would be in charge, what he would change about the neighborhood, and they went steady for almost their entire time they were teenagers, and yeah, but they were also just regular teenagers, hanging out with the others, playing silly games, and sneaking out of the house sometimes at night, until it was time to go to college. In college, Roy Hamilton had an entire wing of the university named after his family, and pretty much everybody knew who he was and where he came from. So there were a lot of expectations, but he really fit into his role of being a public figure like that and being looked up to. And he remembered all of the lessons that he had from his family, from his father especially, and he never lost the ability to be respectful to everybody. He was always loyal to his closest friends and respectful to everybody else. And yeah, he is just someone that it is quite impossible not to like. Saying that he was popular would be an understatement. There is actually quite a lot of footage of all the parties that Roy went to that is totally not usable, like this one. So I'm sorry about this, but I just had to throw that in there because it is representative of all of the parties that he went to, and I wanted to have just one little clip in here to show that. Yeah, and I also think that he was a natural leader. So he was born with a sort of natural leadership. Of course, his family's teachings did something in that, but I think that is something that some people are just born with, and Roy Hamilton was definitely one of those people. People just naturally listen to him because everybody respects him, and because he is so respectful to everybody around him, it is really easy to trust him. He is very loyal, and whenever he makes a promise, he is going to keep it. And that is why most people find it very, very easy to trust him and follow him when he makes a decision. So actually college for him was really sort of a playground for what his job would become later on in life. And he also had fun. He joined a fraternity, and he hung around with lots of different people, and he got a chance to really listen to everyone and see what their views on life were like, even though they would have their differences. And Roy was certainly not one of the guys when it came to the pleasure and romance sims and who took loyalty and stuff like that less seriously. But he did listen to them, and he did get along with them. Yeah, I think it helped him to get a broader view on humanity, and that everybody has their own values and opinions and way of looking at life. And there's always common ground to be found. So moving on to Tasha, she joined the sorority, and they did kind of went their separate ways a little bit when they just got to college. They were young, they wanted to experience college life, so they kind of fully did that. They had a few flirts with other people, but nothing really serious, and very soon they found each other again. And even during the few flirts that they had with other people, they always stayed really close and talked about everything, and they saw each other almost every day, so the two of them were never far apart. So by the end of college, they were known by everyone as that cheesy couple that secretly everybody is really jealous of. So they graduated, as their entire class did together, and Roy was more than ready for his adult life to start. He had big plans. So he said his goodbyes to his college mates and took a taxi straight to his grandparents because he needed to talk to them. He asked them for a loan because he wanted to buy a big house and follow in his Aunt Jane's footsteps and become the mayor of the town. Of course, they were more than happy to do that because they were so proud of him. But they did stress that he would find ways to make his own money and that he would have to pay them back. But they were more than willing to do that. So the next step for Roy was to organize a dinner with his grandparents and Tasha, so they could really get to know each other. So out of respect for his grandmother, Roy actually proposed to Tasha in the presence of Agatha. Apart from Agatha's sloppy eating, that is a really romantic moment for them. And it also fulfilled Agatha's wish for her first grandchild to get engaged. Tasha knew what she was getting into. She knew that if she was going... and Everett James is late, so he was there. I would have certainly redid this date a second time to get them at a different table if I was playing it right now. But yeah, they're both there, and that's the most important thing. So as I was saying, Tasha knew what she was getting into. She knew that if she was going to marry Roy Hamilton, she was going to marry his entire family. She knew that not only his parents, but really his grandparents would be a big part of every important milestone in their lives that was going to influence their image in the public eye. And she not only accepted it, but she respected it. And she fully understood that that was going to be part of her life from now on. She was going to become a Hamilton. So at this point where Roy and Tasha's life together really started, his two brothers are still in college. And since I could easily make a 2-hour video about Roy and Tasha alone, and that is not the purpose of this video, I will only say that they spent their time between Tasha being pregnant, raising their children together. They had 4 sons together, all really close in age, and they hosted as many gatherings as possible almost daily to keep in touch with everyone in town. And Roy was not the only one who socialized with everyone that was there. Tasha also really enjoyed being the hostess whenever she wasn't busy with her children, and she tried to spend as much time as possible with everyone that was there, especially if they were close friends of her. And the Dawsons, of course. Willow Dawson, Parker Dawson, and his wife Amber Dawson. You will not miss anything about the stories of their children because in future episodes we'll see lots of flashbacks to this household when we look at what it was like for their sons growing up here as children. In the end, Roy really did do something with all of his grandparents and his parents' teachings. Not because they expected it of him, but because he really wanted to and he believed in it. He raised his sons the same way that his parents raised him, setting the bar high, but guiding them with love and attention, and encouraging them to use the Hamilton name and privileges to do good in the neighborhood. If his sons actually listen to him is something for future episodes. They each will have their stories, and we will start the actual Let's Play and new stories with his oldest son, Walker, who will by then have just gotten married to his fiancée in a double wedding with his brother, Matthew, and his girlfriend, Natalie. because not only are they not teenagers anymore, but they have actually graduated college and they are well on their way to start the 5th generation. But first, let's skip to Roy's brother Jake, because in the previous episode about the Dawsons, we saw that he married Willow Dawson. He took Willow to see this beautiful house and the future he saw for the two of them and proposed to her right there on the driveway.
Oh, Father Silo. Oh, Weevo. Oh.
So we kind of know where he ends up and with who, and but we don't really know who Jake is. So let's go and take a look at his personality and what his childhood was like. We can see his family tree. Here he is. And so you can see that he's the second of the 3 brothers. And this is also where the Hamilton tree connects to the Dawson tree, because Jake Hamilton married Willow Dawson. Yeah, together they had 3 kids who are in college now. And by the time we start the episodes with the new stories, these guys are going to be graduated and starting their lives. So this is where we are going to start their stories. So let's take a look at Jake. His friends, obviously Willow Hamilton, and his 2 brothers are really close friends too. His closest friends from college were actually Peter Jansen. We are going to see a bit more of him in the new episodes. He is not one of the 4 main families, but he is a big part of this community, the Jansen family. And he was also really close with Randy London and Orlando Santowski and a few other guys that he met in college. And of course his parents are in here somewhere. His mother, Jackie Hamilton, and his father, Robert Hamilton. And you can see that he wants to tell his father, Robert, an inside joke. Sweet. So he is a family sim, obviously. He has the want to marry off 6 children. We are not going to do that. And he already fulfilled his first lifetime wish of becoming a police chief. He actually reached the level 10 in this career, but I put him back in level 9 because, well, if there could be a different level 10, that would be great. I really don't appreciate him flying off. It's I like the cartoony stuff in The Sims 2, and I like the silly things most of the times, but one of my Sims flying off to work is just a little bit too much, a little bit over the line. So I put him back in level 9. I think there is, if anyone is interested in that, I think there is a custom career that puts a different level 10 in there, like a more realistic level 10. I haven't checked it out myself, but that might be something you're interested in. So here we see his personality. We can see that he is a Libra. He is a family sim, and he is different from his brother in the sense that he is much less neat, way more playful, and they are both outgoing, but Jake has always been more about having fun and being a lot less serious about everything, really. He hung around with a lot of guys that weren't that ambitious, and it really is kind of a wonder that he did turn out to be a police chief. He worked hard, and that was mainly because Willow inspired him to do so. But at first, and in his younger years, he was really all about just having fun. And where Roy, his older brother, really had kind of a sense of responsibility from a really early age, and for him being a Hamilton really meant something. He wanted to do his grandparents and his parents justice. Jake just never cared about any of that. He is into arts and crafts, but he's not really doing anything with that. The free time expansion came later than I actually actively played the 3rd generation. So if I would choose now, he would get the fitness hobby, but we'll leave it at arts and crafts for now and see if we start playing him what he's going to do. And in his memories we can see that his kids graduated college. His son is actually on academic probation. He's kind of like his father. He's a bit lazy. He's much more into having fun and playing with his band. So let's hope that he's going to make it. He might not graduate. But if we look further down in his memories, we can see that he also went on vacation. I think that is one of the few Sims that actually went on vacation in this neighborhood. let's see, he did, there it is. So it's a long time ago, he became Captain Hero. Well, that's just great. And then recently I demoted him for story purposes. And to further understand Jake, we are going to take a look at his childhood and how he, as the middle brother of 3, fit into that family. Jake has always been stubborn, rebellious, independent, and he has a good sense of humor. He never felt the pressure to uphold any expectations from his grandparents. The message just never resonated with him that you would need power or money to do anything you want. He felt like he could find his own way of doing things, and he really walked his own path. He did sort of look up to his brother, and he loved him, but he also knew right from when they were kids that he was very different from him. And Roy understood that more than anyone else really. And he also knew Jake better than anyone else. You could say that Jake has some classic cliché middle child issues, and he acted out quite a bit, disobeying his parents' rules at every corner. All the attention about high achievements went to his brother Roy anyway, so he kinda got away with almost anything. And since his younger brother Eric was born, his parents sort of focused on their last baby growing up, much more than keeping a close eye on Jake. It gave Jake a little more room to sneak off and do whatever he wanted, go out partying or stay out late at night. As long as he didn't get into too much trouble, his parents would hardly even notice. There's this clip of when Peter first starts flirting with Willow. Jake starts thinking about getting engaged, and the look he gives them in this picture is just so perfect and funny. And I really had no intention of Jake getting together with Willow back then. I really wanted to pair her with Peter, and even back then he clearly had some issues with my storytelling choices. Who knew? Who knew? And to be honest, I had a much more rebellious path in mind for him at the start. It's really lucky that he found Willow, who inspired him to become more than he was actually setting out to be. Jake spent his teenage years dating Kim, a much more rebellious girl who loved to party and was really outgoing and very playful. She went on to later marry Randy London, who we haven't seen yet but is one of Jake's best friends, and also one of the less ambitious guys that I told you about that he went to college with. They really weren't headed anywhere. They just hung out, watched sports together, played darts a lot, and hung out at the gym. For Peter it didn't really matter because he knew that when he would get out of college there would be, let's just say there was a family business waiting for him. Peter knew what was waiting for him and he always tried to keep Jake out of it. Same as he did for Willow. That is actually the reason that he broke up with her. He will never tell her though, and neither will Jake. They really have been like brothers since they were really young. They shared their entire childhood together, their teenage years, their college years. These guys are, I think, in a way more connected to each other than to their own families. The one thing that makes them the odd one out in their own family is really what they recognize in the other person. He's really so much more of a rebel than his, in his eyes, goody two-shoes family. And Peter, well, he's really not such a bad guy, and with Jake he can just be himself. So for a long time, Jake didn't really have any ambitions, just like the other guys that he survived college with. Neither of them really had career plans or anything like that. And Jake was just mostly known as the guy with the sharp sense of humor that made everyone laugh and that was just really easy to hang out with. Jake had always been attracted to the fun-loving Willow and her free-spirited nature. But it wasn't until they ran into each other again at Roy's wedding that he really fell for her. And it was at that moment that he decided that she was worth building a future for. She was the one that he wanted to be a better person for. And they went on a few dates. Jake decided that this is real. This is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to build a life and I'm going to make Willow happy and be the husband that she deserves. So they got married on the biggest wedding that I had organized until thus far. Really all of their friends and family were there, and I'm actually contemplating making a separate video about the wedding because this was just such a big event. But for now, we will just skip to the daily life that followed after the wedding. They had hired a maid, or a live-in gardener slash cook slash nanny, I guess. Willow could fully dedicate her time to becoming an artist, and being a Dawson, she felt really uncomfortable having someone working in their service, so they usually accompanied Kira when they went into town to do some errands. Kira really supported them through everything, and she became part of the family that soon expanded from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. Because after the first child, a second one followed, and eventually a third one. Family was always welcome at their home, the Dawsons as much as the Hamiltons, and they all visited frequently for birthdays and other family occasions. Their life together has really always been so cozy and comfy and really warm, nice, loving, everything. That I just want to leave you with a few clips of what their family life really looked like. It'll be a 2-minute segment, and then we are going to move over to the last few of the Hamilton boys, Eric and Jeremy.
Jadi tu coba.
Fram?
Bagus.
Oh, belum. Yeah, Nacknerf is who present. Oh, well, let him. You know, Mo. It's It's who Right, so. Hafras.
Olha, babaji. Oh, cara.
Isso
Aspe.
é
Isso é paixão.
Prima da Tabas.
Soube não?
Daqui.
So that really was the shortest version of how this family grew into this family. Also how we got to the point where Jake and Willow just sent their children off to college. And we are getting ready to make one more jump into the history of this family. But since this video has gotten so long already, we are going to do that in part 2 of the Hamilton introduction video. So as always, thank you for watching, I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next part. Have a good week. Bye!